Alright, well, good afternoon, you guys. What time is it? Yeah, it is. It's 12:30. Um, I apologize in advance for my lumpy. I have my afro under here, so I just kind of had to throw my bonnet on and put some sort of scarf on top of it. So that may be a distraction throughout the video. It might not be. I'm not sure. But so this is going to be my attempt to kind of redo the last vlog that I kind of tried to do when I wanted to talk about just the whole topic of DID, alters, fragments, and my experience thus far. That last vlog was such a hot mess. I don't know what happened that day, to be honest. I apologize to all of the bleeding ears and bleeding eyes that had to witness that catastrophe in that video. That was a hot mess. And even after I recorded it, I had intentions to come on camera and like talk about specific subjects that I didn't even talk about, and I don't know why. I guess I just had different emotions and different stuff just coming up, and it was just all over the place, and I deleted it. So I have the book here, and I'm gonna be sharing just a few parts of the book with y'all, which I had to bring this book because I switch on and off when I'm talking, which kind of causes me to kind of forget what I was going to talk about. So maybe some stuff in the book will actually help jog my memory of like what I'm supposed to be kind of like speaking about to begin with. So for those of you who don't know, I got a pet peeve of kind of like re-explaining myself or something that I probably already talked about. So I feel like it's y'all's responsibility to go through playlists to kind of figure out what the recent conversations have been about this, but I'll just do it for this video just out of courtesy, and then after that I'm not gonna speak about it anymore. So I recently posted a girl's interview. Her name is Encina. She has DID, which is dissociative identity disorder. It's the new term for what used to be multiple personality disorder. I didn't know that. I thought it was two different things, but apparently it's the same thing, and they decided to just change the name or change the term of it. But I would say she's a good example. She's a good case of what DID looks like, and it's basically just due to certain traumas, the soul splits or it fractures off from the core persona, and it develops alternate personalities in order to kind of help the person function in life, still go forward in life, and deal with whatever those traumas are. But if DID is what she has, then I want to respect DID for what it really is. That's why I was saying in a recent blog, I don't know if I have DID. I don't know if there's like different stages or different levels to it, because she has actual multiple personalities. Not like in a derogatory sense. If you watch her interview, you'll see what I'm talking about. She speaks about the different alters that she has. She has a 3-year-old child alter that was sexually violated by her father and his friends at that age. She has multiple alters that kind of developed, I guess, over years, that kind of serve as a defense mechanism or a protection for the younger, more vulnerable fragments. And she does have the capability to switch in and out of those alters, but for the most part, she's the host, and she's her true grown mature self is the one that's usually at the forefront. So excuse me. If you watch Encina's interview, you'll get a good idea. I think she's a good idea of what DID probably looks like. There's a lot of people that have DID that have their own YouTube channels. How I feel about that, I mean, I'm a person that I heavily believe in like living and walking in your truth. So I feel like if that helps them, having a DID channel where they talk about it, where they share their different personalities, and they share their experiences that cause those things, and I think that's great for them. I don't have anything against it. I've seen a few channels that I would say I don't like how people kind of make make trauma like a trend, if you know what I'm talking about. Like there's some channels, like, they make money off of this. Like it's cute to be tormented or traumatized and fragmented and stuff. So I mean, everybody kind of does their own thing, but as for me, I don't know if I'm comfortable kind of going in that direction to make this like a DID fragment altar channel, because that's still something I'm personally dealing with, and I'm actually in the beginning of a healing period, which the Lord actually led me to pull this book back out. Excuse me. I don't know why I keep yawning. I'm not tired at all. So yeah, that's something I'm personally dealing with for myself, and that's very, personal and vulnerable to me. That's not something I really want to make a channel out of, to kind of for public scrutiny, because you got people that are just wicked and malicious hearted that will make fun of somebody that's dealing with something like that. And then you have people who don't have any real spiritual understanding. They're still babes in Christ, and they don't understand, that level or that spectrum of deliverance ministry or even healing. I want to say healing. I really do think stuff like DID, that's not a deliverance issue. That's a healing thing. Spirits can be involved, and for the most part, if soul fragmentation is present, they usually are. But the focus on people who are really fractured, and it's graduated, and it's developed into something like multiple personality disorder, or they're split psychologically, that's a healing thing, because the root of all of that in the soul is trauma. That's not really a deliverance issue, and I can attest to that just personally dealing with it. I know for a fact I need more healing than I need deliverance. I would say, even if you wanted to cast a spirit out of somebody, that spirit, more than likely, as the strong man, is probably attached and connected to the root of the trauma that took place in the first place. So I could definitely see, if you tried to put this person through a deliverance session without having them healed first, that demon's not going to go anywhere. Because if that pain and that trauma is not healed and the wound is still there, the spirit's just going to come right back. So I feel like both sides of the spectrum with healing and deliverance ministry, they're both important. But I do feel like people focus more on deliverance and casting out demons than they do actually healing the person and getting to the root of how did all this start? Where did you know what's going on in the first place? So for those of you who don't know, watch her interview. That's y'all's personal homework. If you got on this live, you clicked on it, you're interested, go watch her interview, and you can see for yourself. She actually lets the 3-year-old the altar come out. So when I saw her interview, which I saw it last year, I posted it before on YouTube, and I've seen other DID channels, and I said, I don't think I have DID. Because it's not that graduated to where it's a split personality. Unless there's different levels to DID, like a more mild sense, I would say I definitely have what Encina has, but it's more on a subtle, whereas she has like personalities, she actually has the ability to black out. She said her altars, like the core persona, she'll literally black out, and one of her altars will come to the surface, and they'll be living in, like, they have their own lives, they have their own relationships, and she'll wake up like hours later or days later and not even know what happened. I don't deal with that. So that's what I mean by more graduated, and that's no disrespect to people who are that severely fractured. I mean, I have respect for all different degrees of DID. I don't deal with that. I deal with what she deals with, in the sense of, I would say I have fragments. I don't have altars. I don't have parts of me that I feel like have really gotten to a place of such severity to where I'm split in personality and something is taking over. And you're not dealing with Sister Brandy anymore. Like, I don't deal with that. How my situation and my trauma parallels to hers, I would say my fragments feel a lot like mood disorders. How they manifest, they feel like emotions that come up. They're not they and it's very possible that could be because they're not strong enough to the point where they've developed into actual alternate personalities. So it's definitely some personal research you have to do with that, and then kind of, as far as deliverance for your brothers and sisters in Christ and the body of Christ, if you want to study that whole spectrum of DID and soul fragmentation and stuff. But I just made a post about it, and I was sharing how I don't know if I'm just gonna say, I think my videos vlogging about it is gonna be kind of more spontaneous. They're not really gonna be planned because it's something I'm still dealing with. So it's something really personal to me, and I still need healing. I don't feel like I'm one of those people that's kind of qualified to just kind of be speaking on it or teaching or anything weird like that. I'll share my personal experiences. I'll share some information with y'all that could probably help y'all out. Whether you, maybe it could help you realize what you've been dealing with and that you possibly do have fragments, which I think all of us do, even if it's very subtle. Or maybe you have some relationships with some people. Maybe it's somebody that you're courting, somebody that you're interested in. Maybe it's a sister in Christ you're in fellowship with, or a brother, and they may have these issues. And this information will help you understand them a little bit more, and probably what you kind of been dealing with, and maybe how to, move forward in those relationships with those people. I'm personally on chapter 10, still in the very beginning of the book. I still have a little ways to go. The book is it's a good size. It's not a huge book or anything. Whew, okay, let me catch my breath. So, from my understanding, they do explain in the beginning of the book, there is a difference between altars and fragments. And I have a book about prophetic seers, and I like it's by James W. Gall, and I like the way he explains it because he says all seers are prophets, but not all prophets are seers. I think he said it that way, or I think it's the other way around. Yes, all seers are prophets, but not all prophets are seers. So in the same way, altars or parts of your soul that have been fractured or fragmented off due to trauma or pain or something that happened in your life, they are in themselves fragments and pieces of your soul. But a fragment may not have developed into an altar. So you can kind of see that an altar kind of carries the concept of a alternate personality. Whereas a fragment could still be a fractured off part of your soul, but it may be so subtle, and I would probably say a fragment, I would say, is more kind of they manifest more as like a mood. Like they don't really have the strength or the development to be a personality, but they may manifest as like emotions or parts of you that are still dealing with that pain as if it happened yesterday, something like that. But they don't have the strength or the power to actually manifest as a complete and total separate personality. Let me finish. I mean, do y'all have like a fire every day? Some laws have to change with these sirens on these cars. Like, for purposes like this, where somebody's trying to do an important vlog and you just come down the street with your loud siren, just completely disrespectful. Seriously. I'm sorry. Anyway. So, yes, a fragment. I want you to see a fragment as like it's still a chip, it's still a piece or a part. There's all these different terms. It is a part of your soul that has been fractured off. You're split. It already happened. And fragments have the potential to be so subtle to where you may not even notice that when that thing happened that you fragmented. You may not even acknowledge it to be such unless you do read a book like this, and it kind of starts to make sense of why when you go around that certain person again, why when you go around the certain location or the place that or event, that event took place or something like that, you get triggered. And those same emotions that you felt around the time that trauma happened comes back. That could be a fragment, and you probably didn't even know that, but you've been dealing with that for years. So fragments are not alternate personalities. It's more like pieces of yourself that are still within you. I love to use child fragments as an example because I feel like it's easier to compare those experiences to childhood experiences versus experiences you may have had as an adult. So let's say that you were bullied, as a child. Let's say, you dealt with neglect or rejection from your mom or from your dad, or you had an absent parent, or maybe you dealt with like rape or molestation as a child. So let's say you're like 28, 29 today, you're 30 or 40 something years old today, but that 3 or 5 or 7 year old is still inside of you, basically. I think it's easier to identify child fragments because it's easy for somebody to deny this whole concept until you start talking about that, because that's something everybody can kind of relate to. It gets a little bit more complicated when you start talking about traumas that may have happened when you were like a little bit older, because that's something we would probably be like, oh, I don't really think that's a fragment. I mean, it's something that really hurt me and I still deal with it today. But okay, well, when you get triggered with whatever that breakup was, or that divorce, or whatever that event was, does it feel like exactly how you felt the day that it happened? Would you say that that emotion is still, are you still dealing with it to that capacity? Or is it just like a residual pain that you deal with? There's a difference. You can go through something and still deal with like the effects, or like how it may have affected you or how it may have hurt you, but you could also get triggered with whatever that pain or that trauma was, and you feel like that 6 year old all over again. That's what we're dealing with and talking about here. That's an actual part of your soul. That 6 year old that's split off from your core persona literally has been lying dormant within you. Dan Duvall has way better content talking about this because he has deep spiritual revelation from the Lord about how us being spirit beings, your soul does not look like your body physical form. It's actually multidimensional. So it's very possible that you could actually have a soul fragment or a part of you doing stuff and kind of engaging in the spirit in different worlds. It's very possible, but we're not in the spirit, we're in the physical, so we don't think about it like that. So anyway, I don't want to get too deep into it because there's people that talk about this stuff that can explain it way better than I can. I just wanted to kind of distinguish between what an alter is and what a fragment is. An alter is a fragment, but an alter is a fragment that has developed into its own personality. It can come to the surface, that person can switch into this personality, and it can even be to the point where they have their own relationships. They have their own distinctive feelings. Like they have their own opinions about stuff and their own lives, even their own personal interests, their own religious belief systems, contrary to the core persona itself. Okay? So, all alters, they are fragments because fragments are just parts of your soul that have been fractured off due to trauma. But all fragments may not be alters. They may have not even developed into that. They're probably just kind of there, very subtle, very, like the Lord would literally have to pinpoint and locate them in a deliverance session, so much to the point where they just feel like emotions. Or when they come to the surface, it's so subtle, it may just feel like it's a mood that just kind of came over you. But it's a fragment. So we can kind of say fragments are like the babies and the altars are like the grown-ups, if you want to kind of look at it that way. So they talk about that, and I said, okay, that's something I can definitely relate to. Now, me as a sister, I've said this already, I know for a fact, to my knowledge, from what I've personally experienced, from what I have seen and experienced, and what I've been shown in dreams by the Father himself, I know for a fact I have at least 5 fragments. Some of them are altars. I've already talked to y'all about the 3-year-old fragment that was due to, I always talk about that, sexual abuse. That is a fragment that is definitely not an altar, because that's not something that's ever really like on the surface. That's not something that comes out of me as Brandy. I'll tell you this. The first time she came up was in a deliverance session with Joy Wilburn, who I do not, encourage anybody to go to her for deliverance. I don't support the way she handles her ministry. I don't believe in anybody charging people money for anything. I really question your relationship with the Lord, and your integrity, and various other things if you're charging anybody money for deliverance. So I do not encourage you to go to her. But this, I did go to her. I didn't really know who she was at the time. This was in 2014. And I shared with y'all my experience with her. This was the first time I was even introduced to the reality of fragments. Because at that point, I just thought that deliverance ministry was just dealing with demons alone. So as soon as I got on camera with Joy, that's back in the days when I used to wear like my bandana. This is before I started head covering. If y'all have been with me for that long, yeah. If y'all have been with me for that long, that's when I used to wear my bandana. So I was kind of head covering in my own way, but I didn't realize it. I got on camera, honey, and Joy Wilburn, she was able to discern marine spirits just by the way I styled myself. She could see the influence of certain spirits I was dealing with, and I'm like, man, this lady is good with discernment. Like, she was like on another level, and I wasn't a babe in Christ necessarily, but I just thought it was amazing how just me getting on camera, she could tell by the way I dressed. I think I was still like wearing kind of earrings at that time. I used to wear my hoop earrings and the mascara, and she saw it, and she was just calling out different spirits. Like, she could tell like just the way I was styled, because marine spirits in the marine kingdom, they do have their own kind of style. You'd be very surprised the things that you're drawn to is because of the spirits that you're dealing with. All that stiletto nails, all that crap, witchy looking nails and stuff. But she was the first person I had a fragment come up with in a deliverance session, and we were just trying to cast out certain spirits or whatever. And we were successful in that part, but she was having me work with her, which is how deliverance ministry works when you're dealing with like parts and spirits and stuff. Sometimes when you're speaking to a spirit or you're commanding it to come up, you they'll sometimes speak to you, but it'll manifest or come up in your spirit as a thought. So you have to communicate with the deliverance minister or the counselor helping you, because if your fragments are speaking and they do want to participate, they may not be strong or comfortable enough to just be speaking like I'm speaking. Some of them could be, they could be very vocal. I have a fragment, well, I don't want to disrespect her because she's actually an altar. She's very assertive. Okay, but some of them, they may, if they're child fragments, they may not be as comfortable just coming to the surface like that. So they'll speak, but it'll kind of manifest as a thought. So you want to share that with a deliverance minister. Everything that you think, okay, because that's connected to your spirit. It is. So she was speaking to a spirit, and we had the understanding that we were trying to deal with a spirit. And she told me to share with her the next thing that came to my mind, and molestation came up, which is something that was already commonly known, suspected, and understood in my family. But because I didn't remember and I couldn't recall anything happening to me, I would always tell my mom and my grandma, like, no, nothing happened to me, whatever. But molestation came up, and then Joy, she asked what we thought was a spirit. She said, how old was Brandy when she was molested? That's when the fragment came up. And I was blown away, because like I said, when you have a fragment or an altar that comes up, what it feels like you're kind of like in the background, like you're still conscious of what's going on, but something else kind of came to the forefront. And they can manifest as emotions or moods, or sometimes, depending on how strong the altar is, it can feel like a complete switch, like something just took over you. I would imagine it would be similar to if a spirit was manifesting, but you were still here, you're still conscious. Y'all could probably relate to, if y'all speak in tongues, y'all probably know what I'm talking about. When the Holy Spirit is using a compartment of your spirit man to speak or pray through you, but your soulish woman, you're still there, you're still present for what's going on, but it's not you that's taking over. So it's like the exact same experience. So I had the 3-year-old fragment come up, and from what I remember, I would say she felt like a oh, poor baby. She definitely felt kind of like a I would say it was more emotion based. Definitely, it was like I went from like 21 to like a child, like instantly. And before she came up, I heard the number 3 just screaming in my mind, like 3 3, and it was loud. it was, you could tell it wasn't something that you were thinking. It was definitely coming from another realm, inside of you, or another dimension, spiritually speaking, because we have different compartments to us: body, soul, spirit. So I had the number three screaming in my head. I finally just said three, but it wasn't me that said three. It was the 3-year old, that kind of came to the surface. And when she said it, she started crying, and she just felt so broken, and just, it felt like a child. And I'm like, a 3-year old, that's still a toddler. It's still, three is, I wouldn't say a baby, but she felt very fragile, very vulnerable, just very sad, and she was definitely traumatized because for the remainder of the deliverance session, she wouldn't talk. And that's exactly how I used to be when I was younger. And that's actually why my mom and my family used to ask me, did something happen to you? Did somebody touch you? Because we would go like around family, like family events and gatherings, and I would just be just mute. I just wouldn't talk to people. It, like, in a way where you could tell something happened to the child, but she's not saying anything, which that actually is a character trait that people notice in children that have been sexually abused. Like, they feel very uncomfortable, they have very weird behaviorisms, they don't talk to people, they're just kind of mute. So that's how she was when she came up. She just cried. She said three because she was asked the question, and she just cried for a while, and then after that, Joy just kept talking to her, and she didn't say anything after that. And that was the first time I was like, whoa. I was like, bro, like, this is crazy. Like, I didn't know anything about fragments until that deliverance session. I said, okay, so apparently I have a 3-year-old fragment. Now, why I brought her up, I don't I don't know if I would consider her an alter, because she's come up in different situations. I don't know if y'all recall when I said, when I used to go on job interviews where I felt kind of unsafe or uncomfortable, I would have a child fragment kind of manifest. And I'm assuming that it's her. I don't know if I have other ones that I don't know about. She's the only one that I know about. But I noticed I would become very childlike in interviews to where I felt very intimidated by the process, and I felt grilled. And this is around the time when I dealt with like heavy social anxiety. That's why I was not working at that time. It had nothing to do with like laziness or not wanting to be productive. I was just always very sheltered. My mom didn't really teach me much, and that didn't help that I had a fragment. So I know when I would go on some job interviews, I just felt this, I felt like it was an interrogation, or I didn't know my part felt that way, So I would become very childlike. Some interviews I actually started crying, and the people would look at me like, what's going on? It's not funny, it's actually really sad, but I didn't know at that time, like, that it was an actual fragment or a child altar. So I would come out of the interview like, God damn it. Like, well, I ruined that, definitely not going to get that job, because they're probably thinking, like, something's wrong with this chick. Like, what was that? But I mean, it makes sense that, if you have if you're going into a situation where the spotlight's going to be on you, and you're dealing with a fragment who's already kind of dealt with being violated to some degree, it kind of makes sense that she would feel uncomfortable or kind of unsafe, or, those kind of emotions would come up if this is kind of like a repeat or a similar situation to what fragmented her in the first place. So obviously the fragment was uncomfortable. It's stuff I literally had no control over. Like, I've had a few instances like that where I would be at the workplace, or I would be in a job interview, and she would just come up, and mature Brandy that talks a lot was just gone, and I would just sit there just kind of frozen. And then I would start crying, and because she felt scared, I'm just like, shit. Like, I just ruined this. Like, so yeah, I've seen her come up in those instances. Kind of similar to what Encina said in her interview when they were asking her about her 3-year-old alter. I think her alter's name was, dang, I just watched her video and I forgot her 3-year-old alter's name again. But she said that 3-year-old alter mainly came out a lot in situations, and I'm sorry, y'all. Y'all know I gotta work with this terrible connection that is Cricket Mobile. But she did say that her 3-year-old alter due to her, sexual molestation experience. It would normally come out in situations and around people that made her feel unsafe, that made her feel uncomfortable, and just not protected and not covered. And she said it was normally like in relationships. So other cases, like now that I know that it was an actual fragment, I'm like, okay, I can definitely see like when certain things happen like a few years ago in situations where I felt very unsafe or uncomfortable with the person. That's exactly what would happen to me. I literally would go from like 21 or 22-year-old minded to just kind of being like frozen, and I would just stand, or I would sit in the car next to the person. I just wouldn't say anything. I remember even sitting next to him and kind of pulling my jacket over my face just to kind of disappear. Like I didn't feel safe with the person at all, and that part of me definitely would surface. But that's not something that happens. Let me breathe for a second, because my mind is like. I will just say she's definitely here. And I think that moving forward, obviously, if I walk into more situations like that, or if I get around people where I do feel unsafe, I'm not exactly comfortable, I can definitely see that child altar coming to the surface. It makes sense. But she's not one of the ones that I would say usually surfaces or anything like that. The most recent that I experienced her come to the surface was when I was working at the nursing home that I told y'all about with my previous manager, who's kind of like a father figure to me, and she loved him. So it's kind of funny because I feel like in a way, I hope that wasn't something. What was that? I feel like my child fragment is not something I can control. The more mature, older ones that I'm going to get into in a few minutes, I can kind of relate more with, which makes sense because they're around my age range. But the child one, I've noticed I don't have control over that one. She just kind of comes and just does her thing. So she would definitely attach and cleave to this man. Like I would like run and give him hugs every day. Like she just wanted love from him and just really attached to him like a father figure, which I'm still in contact with him today. But I noticed that that child altar would come out a lot around him, and she was happy, around him. And I would bless him with like gifts every morning, like little snacks and stuff like that. But she definitely the hugging part. She likes to hug a lot. So so I was like, okay. I'm happy to see that she came to the surface in a positive light, and it wasn't something that made her uncomfortable, which that's good for her because that means that she does feel safe with this individual. And I've shared that with him. He sees me as a daughter figure. I see him as a father figure. So I was kind of happy to see her in a different light, because usually it's something negative to where she doesn't feel safe and she's uncomfortable and she's crying all over the place. And this was different. This was actually positive and kind of sad too, because she didn't have a parental covering, I should say. So I don't want to get into that because I can already feel some emotions coming up, and it's just going to disrupt what I'm trying to do with this video. But I'll just say that's the last time I could say she really took over. Definitely kind of took over, really cleaved to him, really attached to him. She just like a kid would, just wanting to jump up and hug him like a dad, or all this hugging and stuff like that. So, I had a deliverance session with Kelly. The video is here on YouTube. I did one where I don't know how I feel about this, because he was trying to use all these different techniques to bring different parts up, and excuse me. I have the video on here where allegedly it was a 4-year-old altar. I don't know how I feel. I don't know how true it is. I don't know if I believe my experience. I know I can say for sure the 3-year-old one is definitely there. Joy Wilburn's experience was a little bit more fruitful and effective than I would say my experience with Kelly's was. I wouldn't be surprised if that's why he just discarded me and didn't want to help me anymore after that, because our first session, nothing really was happening. It was kind of strange. But anyway, um The others, I'm not really comfortable talking about, simply because it's some parts of me that I feel like probably came from the years when I was a teenager, messing with occultic stuff, didn't know any better. I was very young. I feel like I got initiated unknowingly, messing with certain things. I used to mess with spells and, numerology charts and stuff like that. And I've seen that particular altar, and I say altar because that's not one I've just seen in the spirit me, another part of me, partaking in some things that I'm definitely gonna need some deliverance from. The Lord has even shown me through dreams Himself. So yeah, some stuff is not really appropriate or necessary for you to share, with the public, and it may be the case for y'all too. There may be some parts that the Lord may reveal to you that you're dealing with, but that's for y'all's own personal, like, healing and deliverance time for you to kind of deal with in private. So there's definitely some other ones that I've kind of seen just engaging in different dimensions that don't really come to the surface at all. So, and then there's Brene. Oh God, Jesus Christ. Let's just get into the book. I don't want to do too much talking about me. Maybe this could help. If somebody wants to get to know me and know who Brandy is, they could come to this video, maybe. I don't know. But so some stuff I wanted to talk about. I think some of it I already took pictures of and I posted them. So y'all make sure y'all go to the community post. But it was something I was reading this morning. This is what I wanted to talk about. This is chapter 10. The basics of how this author of this chapter ministers to parts when he's counseling somebody, or when he's in like a healing or deliverance session and he's trying to bring parts to the surface. He listed 3 different ways that people normally bring fragments or altars to the surface if they're not originally like the core persona, basically. And the first one was he said some people call them up or to the surface of a person's consciousness to actually switch or take control of the body. While some people find success with this approach, I prefer to use other methods when possible. From here, you can have a conversation with a fractured part, just as with the normal personality of the one you are ministering to, as it speaks through their vocal cords. Depending on how severely fractured a person is, they might experience a subtle or drastic shift take place, such as a headache during the switching. So that is that method is a more direct approach. I'm gonna say this. When I was reading it this morning, because we have different kinds of fragments with their own traumas at different age groups, especially just normally, like just as we go through childhood, then we go through adolescence, and then we go through adulthood, the same way you would have a different mindset and belief or opinion at each age group. If you have a child fragment, for example, you're going to be dealing with that fragment as a child. So they're listing like different techniques of how to call a part, to the front to minister to them or to kind of speak to them through, through yourself. But I think it's wise to say, I think you should really kind of go based on the individual fragment, because you may have some fragments that are more bold and assertive. I have one that's like that. I feel like for fragments like that, that are already kind of vocal, they want to be heard, they want their trauma, to be known, they want to be ministered to, they've been wanting to talk about what's been going on and how they've been hurting. I think you can use that approach with those kind of fragments because they already want to talk. But I think you should also be considerate of the ones that are. I have some fragments that deal with shame, Especially when it comes to sexual abuse, you really are going to you're going to have fragments that deal with a lot of shame, embarrassment, humiliation. They don't really want to be seen. They don't really want to be in the spotlight, but they are hurting. So I feel like the method and the approach that you use to kind of call them up should kind of be dependent on which fragment that you're dealing with. Because if you're dealing with a baby, they can't talk. I've actually heard somebody talk about that in a video. Like, you have some fragments that you can be fragmented in the womb. That's why I say, be careful how you talk around your children. Be careful how you're speaking, what your energy is. People that be around you, you got to protect your energy, the kind of people that you're welcoming in your circle when you're pregnant, because especially when it comes to the other parent of that child that you're pregnant with, because babies can sense and they can feel rejection. They're a part of everything the mother is feeling. So the idea is very sad, but it's very possible, and that's your most vulnerable state is an infant, or even while you're developing in the womb. That's your most vulnerable. So we always talk about babies. I'm like, yeah, babies is, they're vulnerable too, but when you're actually developing in the womb and you feel rejection, and the idea that you can even split off at that stage of development, we don't want that. So protect your womb, pray over your womb, protect your energy for your baby's sake. But I just kind of brought that up because you obviously wouldn't want to call up an infant fragment or a 2 or 3-year-old fragment, because you see what happened with mine. She did get called up and she was just kind of mute, just like a child would be. So you basically called a 3-year-old child into a room to talk to her about a serious matter that happened to her, something she probably can't even process at that age, but it did happen to her. And what do you think her reaction is going to be? She may not even say anything. They may talk. Mine didn't. So I guess that's just how traumatized she was. And I don't remember the sexual abuse act happening to me. It's something that the Lord showed me in dreams, and He's confirmed it. But they talk about that in this book too. That when you fragment the emotions or the memories of the trauma itself, it gets stored into a part of like your subconscious. They call them storage cubbies. So this is why people who deal with fragments, or they say a good way to tell if you have fragments is like memory loss or forgetfulness. And I deal with that heavy, like with little stuff, like daily throughout the day. Um, I'll be thinking something or planning to do something, and like the next few seconds or a minute, I'll just completely forget what the heck I was gonna say, or where I was gonna go, what I was gonna do. I'll go to like a vending machine, and like I'll literally leave my card in the vending machine. And I'll go to the bed and be like, where the hell is, like, what did I do with my card? Then I'll have to go back to the gas station or go back to it's weird. It literally is like a switch that happened, and I'm like, how did I leave my card in the gas pump or in the vending machine? So stuff like that. They said those are clear indicators that you may be dealing with fragments, because their sole purpose and their design in being fractured in the first place was to kind of tuck that trauma or kind of tuck that memory away, so you don't really have to deal with that part and you can kind of keep functioning. So it's like pieces of you just keep getting chipped away. So whatever is it sounds really bad, and it is really bad, and it's really sad, which is why we really need the Lord to heal us, because whatever's left of you is what you're driving off of, basically. So I don't know. Let's say that 4-year-old that got beat terribly, by the parents, and you didn't get a regular whooping. You got like some serious stuff that was really just child abuse. It's easier for that part to just be kind of fractured off. Let's just take that part and put it somewhere, and whatever is left, it's like a hole is gonna be there, basically. Whatever is left of you that has kind of been unscathed, we'll just move forward with that part. It's kind of like your body. Like if you have like a wounded leg or a wounded finger or arm or something, it's easier sometimes to just kind of, you know, I don't want to say cut off. That sounds really morbid, but let's just get rid of that particular ailment, and we'll just move forward with the rest of us that we do have to work with, type of thing. So what the heck was I gonna say? I forgot again. um yes, I do not remember the sexual abuse that happened to me. So when I read books like this, and that's not the first time, the Lord has literally led me to videos of different people that have no connection to each other that have said the same thing, that the Lord is not allowing you to remember what happened because that's how traumatic it actually was. Like, if He were to allow that memory to resurface, and maybe for your own benefit, He's keeping that fragment tucked away somewhere, or maybe like if you were to place it on the shelf until He's ready to deal with it, to where you're in a place of healing or more development, maybe spiritually, and just mature wise to actually deal with it the way He wants to, it would probably psychologically destroy you if you actually remembered or called to mind what the hell happened to you. Because rape or sexual abuse, that's equivalent to like people who were like in the army. They come out of situations and those experiences, like dealing with like serious PTSD and stuff like that. They do remember this stuff, so they're screwed for life until they get healing. So if you can see how that psychologically affects somebody that was in the army, what do you think that would do to you if the Lord allowed those memories to flood and just resurfaces of when you were sexually abused as a child? So maybe it's a good thing that you don't remember. I have no memory. I can't recall it happening at all. I've had a few dreams that I'm sure was some truth and validity to it. And then I've had dreams of the Lord just confirm to me to let me know, yes, this did happen at this age, but He didn't show me that. I don't have any of that. So I'm pretty sure that that whole memory, they call it storage cubbies in this book, is tucked away somewhere very far, and that's probably why I have like these holes of like serious memory loss. I'm very forgetful. So it's like she's here, she dealt with it, it comes up sometimes, but as far as the trauma, I can't even, it would take some serious digging with the Lord in a deliverance session to bring that up. I have had some symptoms of I've talked about this in videos before too, because they say that this is kind of an indicator as well when it comes to child fragments and sexual abuse, that normally people who have dealt with that, they're really uncomfortable in like sexual situations. So I have noticed that that is I'll just say I have felt I don't want to talk about that. But that's definitely something I can relate to. Just certain things when it comes to intimacy on a physical level. I literally feel something I'll say this. Since I haven't really dealt with nobody on that level in years, I have been celibate for like 8 years basically over. It's going to be 8 years next month. Not so much physical experiences, but some movies that I watch and they have certain scenes where certain sexual things are going on, or even something as simple as kissing, something will come over me and I feel this splitting. It's a terrible feeling where I feel tormented just even watching the scene. Where most Christians, they probably be like, oh, let's skip this, so we can, keep our minds pure. Movie's a good movie, but, in respect to the Lord, and because we obviously don't want to be watching anything sexually obscene or anything like that, we'll skip it. I get tormented. Like, it's not necessarily a memory that comes to mind, but you can tell something happened to where when I see stuff like that, there is a sister in Christ I used to talk to. Me and her used to be cool, and we used to talk about everything. We used to talk about our words of marriage, and as sisters and as women, we would talk about like what sex with our God ordained spouse would be like. And I feel bad for her because anytime I would talk about it, I would get severely tormented and vexed to the point where I could not even continue like the discussion with her anymore. And she never understood like why, what the heck was going on. So she would always just kind of like change the subject or something. But so at that point, like I didn't at that yes, at that time, I didn't know that it was an actual fragment. I would not always attribute something to be a soul fragment. I know all those terms and all that stuff. I just know I would always experience or deal with that. So I would just be tormented by it, and I just didn't want to talk about it. And I'm just like, they talk about that in this book too. They said, one of the indicators that you may have a child fragment is feeling tormented or emotionally affected about stuff that you either can't remember even happened or may have never even happened. That's because there is a fragment there that probably experienced that, but you don't have memory of it. And I said, well, that makes sense because I've never been in any sexual encounters or experiences where somebody's abused me, or, I've never even really dealt with that. So the fact that that keeps happening, it's like, what the hell is going on? And that kind of concerns me because I'm like, I hope that's not an issue for when I do get married. And it is time for me, obviously, to be intimate, with my spouse, whoever he is, you know. I hope that that's not going to be an issue when it is time for you to be, sexually intimate with the husband that the Lord has chosen for you. I'm assuming it will be, but I think by that point, long before I get married, I'm sure I would probably discuss all this stuff with that person, and I would make him very much aware, so at least to prepare him, this and this happened to me. I deal with, fear in this area or just extreme discomfort in this area. I think I remember saying this in a previous video. It may even be the video where I was talking about the 4-year-old fragment that came up in Kelly's session. I talked about this before. I don't know which video it was, but I would imagine it would be an awkward experience if you're a grown man and you have a wife who has a child altar, and when it's time for y'all to get busy, or explore one another sexually, that child fragment comes to the surface. Like, that would throw. That's why I say, definitely be led with the Holy. Be led by the Holy Spirit if you are somebody that deals with any mild case or form of DID or soul fragmentation, with sharing that with the person that you're courting with, because I'm gonna be honest, the way I am, just me as Brandy, I just believe in living in your truth, and I feel like what you see is what you get. Like, I'm not that person that's gonna hide my DID or hide, these different parts of me from somebody just because I don't do all of that. I'm gonna let you know up front. Because, I mean, before you marry this person, before y'all even take it to the next level or even strengthen whatever bond that is or feelings that y'all have for each other, they still have to know who they're dealing with. That's out of respect. That I hope everybody's doing that. I know there's some people who don't. Some people, it's too late. You done married this person, and then Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde comes out, and it's like, well, secretly I was molested and I didn't tell you. What the hell you mean you didn't tell me? So now this is something I have to deal with for the rest of my, like, I don't believe in that. Let people know who you are, what your traumas are, what your issues are. Like, I'm already transparent as I can transparently be. That's the kind of person I am, and that's what I believe in. And let them choose if they want to be a part of that. Hopefully that's what you're doing. Okay? So when that time comes, like, I would like to think that before we even get to the point of marriage or sex or anything like that, he already knows this happened to her. So it would make sense if she's uncomfortable when that time comes. And maybe, like I said in a previous video, I think, it could be awkward if the child fragment literally comes to the surface, but because we're older, it may not feel like a child. It could just manifest as just simple discomfort. And maybe you could even make that part of them feel comfortable, because I would like to think, because it is a child fragment, children are very sensitive to the energies of people. So maybe that part of you, I would like to think that by that point, she or he would already be comfortable, with the person that you're courting with, or your spouse to be, or whoever. Maybe she'll open up a little bit more when that time comes, I'm sorry. Maybe she or he will open up a little bit more. They'll be a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more comfortable with that person long before the sex part even comes. And Because the main issue I would like to think with children that have been violated or sexually abused, it may not even be sexual abuse, it could just be any level of abuse. I think their main issue is being covered, feeling secure, and feeling protected. And you'll be surprised that even if your child fragments don't ever surface, maybe they're just subconscious parts of you that just really lie dormant, they can open up to people as you chill with them over time, you know? So I think all of us probably corporately have that, and we probably never realized it was a fragment. But you'll notice, like, a lot of us are kind of guarded in the beginning with people, but the more you spend time with them, get to know them a little bit better, and those sensitive parts of you, or your intuition, whatever you want to call it, can kind of pick up on that person's energy, and you'll become comfortable with them over time. So it may not be as much of an issue, you know. So, Lord have mercy. But I have to use the restroom. I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna make a part 2. So I'll be right back.